Hello, beautiful soul. Welcome to your sleep story. I am Theresa Noye, your radical self-love coach. I work with high-achieving women who typically put themselves last to love themselves enough to put themselves first. You deserve to love, cherish, and honor yourself without guilt because your well-being matters. It gives me great joy to be the voice that guides you into a restful sleep tonight. You are so deeply loved. Your existence is the proof. Before we begin tonight's sleep story, let's start with a relaxation session. I'm going to count down from 10 to 1, and as I do, allow yourself to let go more and more. 10. Feel the support beneath you, the support of your bed, the floor, and the earth beneath. Imagine the warm sand of a beautiful beach cradling you, holding you with the earth's gentle strength. Allow that certainty, that solidity to enable you to release a little more, to sink into this moment a bit more. 9. You are safe. All is well. Allow my voice to be a point of safety for you. Allow my voice to be an anchor that keeps you in a safe space. Know that my voice will only ever bring you into safe places. Feel it into your body now. Notice where you might be holding tension. Maybe your feet, your hands, your face, or your belly. Just release it all. Your body has worked hard for you today. It's time for it to rest. It deserves rest. 8. Today is done. Whatever has been, has been. Whatever will be, will be. All you have is now. So thoughts about the day that just was, or days that are to come, don't serve you right now. Allow that realization to enable you to settle into this moment more. 7. This is your moment. You have nowhere to be, nowhere to go. The only place you need to be is here, enjoying this cozy sleep story and the sound of my voice. You deserve it. 6. You deserve it. You deserve rest. You deserve sleep. You deserve to be here. Allow that fact to help you let go a little more. 5. Perhaps allow yourself to feel a little gratitude now. Gratitude for this moment. Gratitude for the ability to rest. Gratitude for the simple things. Your breath, the shelter you have tonight, the opportunity to switch off in a place of safety. 4. Embrace the coziness of this moment, the coziness of lying down in a safe space, moving towards sleep in the beautiful act of storytelling. 3. Begin to engage with your imagine now. Engage with your imagination. Picture a beach in the Caribbean, a secluded spot on the beautiful island of Barbados, isolated from the rest of the world, or another favorite spot that you may have. Allow yourself to engage. Bring that picture to mind and check in with your body again. Make sure you're not holding tension anywhere. Release and allow yourself to sink a little deeper to completely let go now as I tell you tonight's sleep story. The Midnight Greenhouse, Chapter 1, The Door That Waited. It began with a question she couldn't quite name. Not the kind that needed solving. No pressure, no deadline, no ache of urgency, but the kind that hums quietly under the skin, like a lullaby remembered from long ago. A curiosity shaped more by sensation than thought. And so, on a night brushed with velvet stillness, she followed it. The path was unfamiliar, yet she walked with ease. Every step felt like an exhale, soft and slow, as if the earth beneath her feet had agreed not to rush her. The air was gentle. It held the warmth of a memory, something tender, like fresh sheets warmed by afternoon sun, or the arms of someone who truly sees you. And then she saw it. Tucked beneath the curve of an old stone wall and a row of slumbering citrus trees stood tall, curved glass framed in tarnished bronze, its structure glowing faintly beneath the moon. The light wasn't artificial. It came from within, like the building itself had grown luminous over time, fed by moonbeams and quiet prayers. The door, a graceful arch of old iron and glass, seemed to wait for her. Not call to her, not demand, just wait. As though it had always known she would come when she was ready. She rested her hand on the cool handle. Her breath deepened without her trying. There was no hesitation, only a reverence, as if she were about to enter a sanctuary built not of religion, but of rhythm. The door opened with a sigh, the hinges murmuring in approval. Inside, warmth enveloped her like a silk robe, lush, damp, and fragrant. The scent was rich and heady, but never overwhelming. Night blooming jasmine, soft earth, a trace of citrus and orchid. The air felt alive with softness. A kind of loving attention lived here, the kind that required nothing of her in return. She stepped inside slowly, as though crossing a threshold into another version of herself. The space opened like a dream that had taken root. Tall ferns reached toward the domed ceiling, their fronds feathering the air with delicate intention. Moonflowers curled open petal by petal, glowing pale against the leaves like stars scattered low to the ground. Orchids leaned in from wooden beams above, suspended in lazy arcs like dancers mid-stretch. It was midnight, but there was no darkness here. Only the kind of light that softened edges. the kind that made everything look a little more magical, a little more forgiving. It was not day, not night, but something in between, a place that asked nothing of the clock. She walked slowly. The path beneath her was a worn stone mosaic, dappled with puddles that mirrored the glassy dome above. Each footstep sent gentle echoes into the warm silence, like notes played on a distant piano. She did not rush. The kind of woman who always rushed didn't seem to exist in here. Here, she felt more like water, not performing, not fixing, not striving, just being. She moved past leaves the size of open arms, under low-hanging vines that swayed slightly as if bowing. The plants welcomed her, not as a guest, but as a sister, a familiar soul who had remembered her way back to this hush-filled haven. And though she couldn't yet explain why, she felt tears bloom behind her eyes, not sad, not tired, just grateful. It was as if the air itself was whispering, "You made it." Not to a destination, but to a rhythm, one that matched the one beating gently beneath her ribs. She paused near a moonflower vine and let her fingers graze its petals. They were impossibly soft, like the cheek of a newborn or the underside of a butterfly's wing. The scent curled around her nose, sweet, secretive, ancient. And in that moment, she remembered the question, the one that led her here. But instead of rushing to answer it, she simply let it sit beside her, like a friend who didn't need to speak. The question, the greenhouse, the midnight, all of it wrapped her in something sacred. She was exactly where she needed to be, and the night was just beginning to unfold. Chapter 2, The Path of Listening. She continued along the winding path, her fingertips brushing leaves as if exchanging secrets. There was no need for direction. Her body knew where to go, guided not by logic, but by sensation. As though each step was less about moving forward and more about sinking in. Inward, downward, deeper into ease. The deeper she walked into the greenhouse, the more the world outside fell away. The constant ping of emails, the silent weight of responsibility, the expectation to make the most of it, all dissolved like mist in morning sun. Here, no one expected anything of her. Not excellence, not answers, not even presence. Only permission. She paused beneath a large banana tree, its wide leaves stretching out like parasols above her. Droplets of water clung to the edges, catching the moonlight like jewelry. One drop fell slowly, sliding down the curve of a leaf, hanging in suspense and then letting go. A single sound, plink, and the quiet that followed made it feel like applause. She smiled. It was remarkable how much beauty she had missed in her busyness. not because she didn't care, but because she hadn't been trained to move fast, to earn rest, to prove peace. But the plants asked none of that. They grew because they were loved. They bloomed because it was time. And they reminded her that her worth was not in her doing, it was in her being. Right now, right here. A soft rustle behind her made her turn, not from fear, but wonder. A white butterfly, wings lined with flecks of gold, flitted lazily through the air, weaving in and out of fern shadows. It didn't hurry. It simply moved because it wanted to. She followed it without thinking, her steps lighter now, the inner pressure loosening like a button undone at the collar. The butterfly floated through a wooden arch wrapped in wisteria vines, their blossoms a tender lavender that swayed as she passed. On the other side, the space opened into a quiet alcove. A shallow pool sat at the center, surrounded by moss and low palms. The water shimmered like liquid silk, smooth and dark and still. She sat beside it, her legs folded beneath her, and leaned forward. Her reflection gazed back, not the one she wore in meetings or in mirrors, but a softer self, one who looked rested, whole, unarmored. She exhaled through her nose and closed her eyes. The air kissed her face with warmth and moisture. The kind of breath the earth offers when it knows you've been holding your own too long. And in that breath, she heard it. The whisper of her own aliveness. Not loud, not urgent, just steady. Like the hush of waves or the turning of pages in a book you love. She had been so used to noise, external demands, internal monologues, but this was the sound beneath the sound, the silence that nourished, and she let it fill her. Her shoulders softened, her jaw relaxed, the slight furrow in her brow, the one she didn't realize she carried, melted like sugar into tea. Time was irrelevant here. Her body didn't need answers, it needed listening. And that's what this moment became, an act of deep listening to breath, to beauty, to the quiet parts of her that rarely got to speak. Somewhere, a bloom opened. She didn't need to see it to know. She could feel it. And as she sat beneath the still water, surrounded by ferns and the hush of night flowers, she realized something. She didn't come to solve anything. She came to remember that her softness was never weakness, that rest was not a reward but a rhythm, and that her presence was not something to be earned, it was already enough. She placed her palm on her chest and simply felt the rise, the fall, the truth of being alive. And in that quiet corner of the midnight greenhouse, she whispered to herself, not as a command, but as a blessing. You don't have to carry it all to be held. Chapter 3, The Room of Scented Stillness. She rose slowly from the moss-lined pool. as though time had gently unspooled her from the fabric of rest. Her body felt like velvet, heavy with calm, saturated with softness. Not tired, not dull, just full. As if something sacred had seeped into her bones, rinsing them in stillness. The path led her onward, though there was no urgency, just an invitation. She wandered deeper into the greenhouse, and the air began to shift again. It thickened slightly, not in discomfort, but in richness. The fragrance here was rounder, warmer, notes of ripe figs, sun-drenched papaya, and the whisper of clove leaves lingered in the air like an invisible lullaby. It felt like being wrapped in a memory of summer, one where nothing was scheduled and everything tasted better. She entered a room where vines draped the walls like cascading poems, and tropical fruit trees stretched gently toward the dome's moonlit ceiling. The light in this room was amber, not gold, not yellow, amber. The kind of light that feels like kindness, like grace made visible. A wooden bench curved around the base of a large cacao tree. She sat, letting the texture of the moment settle around her. Above, a canopy of broad leaves swayed slowly, creating a rhythm like a heartbeat. Or perhaps it was her heartbeat, echoing the leaves. She inhaled deeply. It wasn't just the scent, it was the feeling beneath the scent. A memory surfaced, not sharp, but soft around the edges. A quiet afternoon long ago, curled up by a window with a book that smelled like old pages and possibilities. The rain tapping on the glass, the stillness of completely being with herself. The same feeling now returned, not as nostalgia, but as a reunion. She had never truly lost it, only forgotten how to visit. From a branch above, a delicate blossom floated down and landed in her lap. She picked it up carefully. It was creamy white with a coral center, its petals waxy and thick like silk carved from fruit. She turned it over gently in her hand, marveling at how something so simple could feel like a gift. No one had handed it to her. No one needed to. The greenhouse gave without asking, because she had finally arrived. Here, giving and receiving were not transactions. They were breath. Inhale, exhale, rest, rise, exist, be held. A soft humming sound drifted in from another corner of the room. Not music exactly, but close. It was the hum of bees tucked inside blossoms, of sap slowly moving through stems, of petals brushing against glass in the breeze. A harmony of living things, each at ease with its purpose. She tilted her head back and closed her eyes. Her mind, usually a tangle of thoughts and tasks, now open like a window letting in evening air. The need to analyze faded. The compulsion to plan quieted. In their place was a deep, indulgent curiosity. What if this is what clarity feels like? Not a lightning bolt, not a perfect sentence, but a body so fully present that the noise has no room to grow. She pressed her feet into the warm floor. Even the ground seemed to pulse gently beneath her, like the greenhouse was breathing with her, beside her. The flower in her hand glowed softly in the amber light. And in that golden hush, a new desire unfurled, not loud, not hungry, but pure, to belong to her own life again, to return to her days not as a warrior or a fixer, but as a listener, a lover of beauty, a keeper of rhythm, not to be less, but to be whole. She opened her eyes slowly. The trees swayed in agreement, and the path ahead, still lit by the quiet moon, waited with the patience of something eternal. Chapter 4: The Canopy of Quiet Joy. She followed the path, which now curved upward slightly like the gentle rise of a lullaby's next verse. The greenhouse expanded into a lofted space, a kind of treetop veranda draped in vines and shadows. A wooden staircase worn smooth from time and care guided her upward without rush. Each step was its own kind of arrival. At the top, the view opened. An overlook nestled among the tallest trees in the greenhouse. From here, she could see the entire glimmering interior. Pools of moonlight spilled across leaves and stone, catching the curve of petals and the slow swaying of branches below. It was like looking at a living painting that breathed in harmony with her. She leaned on the railing, her hands resting lightly on the mossy wood. The warmth here was different, less humid, more airy. A breeze moved through the space like a sigh, fragrant with eucalyptus and something faintly sweet like honeysuckle caught in a dream. Above her, the dome arched high and clear. The moon sat perfectly centered, framed by stars and softened glass. It looked down not as a distant ruler, but as a friend, a kind one, the kind who always shows up, even when you forget to look up. She smiled, not because something happened, but because nothing needed to. There was joy here. Not the loud kind, not the kind that needs an audience or a milestone. This was quiet joy, the kind that lives in the bones, that hums beneath laughter, that blooms in ordinary stillness. A low-hanging vine brushed her shoulder as if in greeting. She reached up and gently wrapped it around her fingers, feeling the pulse of life inside. It was subtle, like a whisper beneath skin, but it was there. Everything here is alive, and so am I. She closed her eyes, breathing deeply through her nose. The inhale moved like silk down her throat, across her ribs, and into her belly. She exhaled slow and open, as though nothing was chasing her. And then she felt it, a soft vibration beneath her feet, like the greenhouse was purring. She placed one hand on her heart and one on her belly. For a moment, she said nothing, thought nothing, just listened. And in that silence, something true floated to the surface. This is what safety feels like. Not just physical safety, but soul safety. The safety of being unhurried, the safety of being unjudged, the safety of being. Her breath deepened again. She remembered how often she had confused safety with control. How many times she had gripped, planned, perfected, believing it would shield her from chaos. But here, nothing was controlled, and everything was at peace. This joy didn't come from accomplishment. It came from surrender, from presence, from the luxury of letting go. She opened her eyes again. Tiny lights danced around the treetops. Fireflies, their golden flickers moving like notes of music across the air. One landed near her hand on the railing and blinked twice, then paused. She watched, enchanted by its rhythm. Even this small creature, barely bigger than a seed, glowed without trying. She imagined asking it, "How do you do it? How do you shine like that?" And she heard the answer not in words, but in knowing. You don't make the glow, you allow it. A soft laugh escaped her lips, quiet, surprised, delighted. How long had she tried to make the glow, to generate her own light through sheer will, determination, perfection? But this place reminded her, light doesn't come from effort. It comes from essence, from letting the truth of you rise gently to the surface. The firefly lifted off and disappeared into the trees. She stayed a while longer, resting in the hush, not planning the next step, not scripting a lesson from the moment, just letting joy rise like mist at dawn. And when she finally stepped down from the canopy, her body moved differently. Not heavier, not lighter, but truer, as though the air itself had rewoven her, and the path below welcomed her back. Chapter 5. The glass table and the gentle light. As she descended from the canopy, the air shifted once more, lighter now, almost effervescent, like a sigh after a laugh or the hush after a poem is read aloud. It was the kind of atmosphere that felt freshly washed, like the world had been rinsed clean when she wasn't looking. She stepped into a new room of the greenhouse, one unlike any other. The space was open and round, with glass walls curving into a high dome above, as if the room itself were a drop of dew made massive. Hanging from the dome's center was a delicate chandelier of vines and glowing orbs, tiny floating lights that swayed gently in the quiet. They did not compete with the moon. They complemented her. At the center of the room sat a long glass table, its surface transparent and luminous, like still water waiting to reflect something sacred. Around it, simple wooden chairs rested, their forms smooth and open. No one else was there, and yet she felt accompanied, supported, welcomed. She walked to the table and sat down slowly, letting her hands rest on its cool surface. Beneath the glass, A layer of soft moss had been arranged with stones, petals, and seeds, as if someone had built a miniature garden just for her, quiet and eternal. It was then that she noticed something remarkable. The table did not reflect her image. It reflected her essence. Not her face, not her hair, not her expression, but the shape of her spirit, calm, luminous, open. She looked down and saw somehow the version of herself she had longed to meet. Not perfect, not edited, just whole. A woman who had let go of proving and instead allowed herself to bloom. She exhaled the deep breath. It was nourishing. A steaming teacup had appeared at her side. She hadn't seen anyone bring it. It simply waited. A small curl of steam spiraled upward, carrying a scent she couldn't quite name. Part citrus, part mint, part something golden and warm like sunlight steeped into liquid. She lifted the cup to her lips. The first sip melted across her tongue like a lullaby in liquid form. It wasn't just delicious, it was kind. The kind of taste that holds your hand without words, that reminds you of something you didn't know you'd forgotten. You are allowed to feel good without earning it. She set the cup down and closed her eyes. Around her, the soft glow of the chandelier danced against the glass walls. The vines overhead rustled just slightly as if in prayer. The room felt like a cocoon, round, safe, timeless. A chapel of warmth where nothing needed fixing. She felt her shoulders fall again. How many times had she released the same tension only to pick it back up? And yet here, each release felt more lasting, as though her body was beginning to believe she didn't have to brace anymore. A question arose, soft and honest. What would life feel like if this was the baseline? If rest wasn't rare, if joy wasn't squeezed between tasks, if beauty wasn't a reward for achievement, but a constant, quiet companion. She let the question float without needing to answer it. Some truths don't demand response. They simply ask to be felt. She ran a finger gently across the table's mossy edge. The texture was cool, damp, grounding. The stones beneath her fingertips were smooth, ancient feeling. She picked one up. It was small and blue-gray, shaped like a comma. She smiled. A pause. That's what this whole night had become. A sacred, sovereign pause. Not a break from life, but a return to it, to the rhythm beneath the rush, to the self beneath the striving. She placed the stone in her pocket, not as a souvenir, but as a reminder that even when she left this place, the pause would come with her. That the beauty she felt was not trapped in the greenhouse. It was rising from within. And as the lights dimmed slightly, almost in a nod of reverence, she stood, letting one last look sweep across the room. a chapel of stillness, yes, but also of joy, softness, and clarity, of being. She stepped through the glass archway, the tea still warming her from the inside out. One chapter remained, and she was ready to walk it. Chapter 6, The Garden That Remembers. She moved through the final corridor of the greenhouse with the kind of grace that can only come after deep remembering. Not the remembering of facts or lists or obligations, but the remembering of essence, of self. The path was lined with low lanterns, nestled in the soil, their glow a soft gold, flickering like candlelight against the leaves. It was the most open space yet, more garden than room. Clusters of flowering trees stretch wide across the glass ceiling above, their blossoms releasing fragrance with every passing breeze. Starfruit, hibiscus, angel's trumpet. She recognized some. Others had no name, but all of them felt familiar. Not because she'd seen them before, but because they felt like her. This was not a place of final answers. It was a place of arrival, a return, a gentle exhale at the edge of the divine. In the center of the garden was a shallow stone circle, filled with warm sand that sparkled faintly beneath the moonlight. She stepped into it barefoot, letting her toes press into the silky grains. The warmth surprised her, wrapping her feet like a welcome home. The sand held no heat from sun. It glowed from within as though the earth here carried memory. She knelt slowly in the center and placed both palms on the ground. The moment was quiet. No sudden visions, no flashing insight, just stillness. And then, without thought, without force, she spoke aloud, a whisper, almost too soft for the ear to catch. Thank you for waiting for me. The words floated up and dissolved into the vines above. There was no response, and yet everything responded. The leaves rustled, even though no breeze passed through. A cluster of moonflowers opened wider. A few petals floated down and landed near her knees. The garden had heard her. More than that, it had always known her. And in that knowing, she felt something unlock, not in her mind, not even in her heart, but in the space just beneath her ribs. The place where longing sometimes lived, the place where she had stored old fears, quiet doubts, unanswered questions. Without ceremony, those things lifted, not forced, not burned away, just released. She opened her eyes and looked up. The moon high above shone directly through the center of the dome, casting a pale halo of light around her. The glow didn't dazzle, it soothed. It made everything shimmer, including her own skin. She looked down at her arms, her legs, the curve of her hands, and for the first time in what felt like a long time, she didn't feel behind. She didn't feel late or unfinished or too much. She just felt real, whole, present. like someone who had nothing to prove, and that, perhaps, was the deepest kind of beauty. The kind that doesn't dazzle or announce itself, the kind that simply is, quiet, certain, rooted. She stood slowly brushing the soft sand from her skin. From the far end of the garden, a breeze finally moved through, lifting her hair like a gentle blessing. The petals swirled in response, dancing across the path as though celebrating her journey. There was no door to exit, no closing ceremony, no goodbye. Only a gentle understanding she could return whenever she needed. Because the greenhouse wasn't just a place, it was a rhythm, a memory, a sanctuary within her. One she had always carried, one she could now trust. She took one last breath, letting the warmth of the night fill her completely. And as she stepped beyond the arch of the midnight greenhouse, her body glowed, not with effort, not with perfection, but with peace. The kind that stays, the kind that roots, the kind that remembers. And somewhere behind her, moonflowers continued to bloom.